sky right before my eyes, just like the sea moves me every time, calling to me, begging me. Reality reminds me I still want you. I want you. I still want you.
Hey hoes, I'm Donata Patuesi and welcome back to Island Fever Podcast, where grown Pasifika people do grown things. I'm really excited because today is a very special episode. I've called on a few of my friends to join me and we're having an all trans conversation. You already know that Miss Island Goddess, Dezonica Michaels, is in the building. Hey! Oh my God. And so many of my friends are also in this space. So I'm really grateful to have them. Crit, unfortunately, and Vi are unable to be part of this episode. So I've also tapped onto the brilliant wisdom of two of my other friends, Angayel Tupu Vienna and True Koroi. And I can't wait to be able to unpack with you all their experiences moving throughout the world as queer and trans Pacific Islanders. So let's bring them on in. Are you ready? Period. Welcome. Hey. Please, before we get in, tell everyone about yourselves. Let's start with Desi.
Hey, Talafalava everyone. My name is Desi Bartley, also known as Dezonica Michaels, the current and reigning Miss Island Goddess.
Period.
Ulavanaka. My name is True Koroi. I use they, he pronouns and rep in Tacoma.
Hey, Tacoma in the house.
Salafa everyone, my name is Angayel Tupu Vienna. I am your Miss Island Goddess 2010 participant.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we are going to get into it because the main question that we're going to be centering this episode around is where in the U.S. can trans Pasifika people actually be safe? And is that happening in your lives right now, right? And when we talk about safety, the themes that we're going to be unpacking is beyond physical safety, right? We're going to be talking about community. We're going to be talking about jobs. We're going to be talking about being loved out loud. So I'm curious to learn more about you all. Tell me about your experiences growing up that have allowed you to maybe move through the world more safely and where it is that you grew up. Because I know many of us have ties to our island homes or different cities. So I'd love to hear about your early life. Let's start with Desi.
So I used to live here in Washington. And it was when I lived here, I got to meet a lot of my fellow Samoan Fa'afafing sisters. And then when I was here, I worked a few jobs here, and then it was from here I was able to get the connection of working in the fishing industry. So now I live in Cedar City, Utah. Currently, I'm working at a warehouse to where we pack foam plates. Sadly, they are closing permanently, but it's not going to stop me from continuing to move on with life.
So you brought up fishing, and that for me is a very interesting take because we have a shared connection there. You all, as a way to fund my gender transition, I was one of those girls that was like asking all the elder trans women, what is everyone doing to get, titties done and all that, the bells and whistles. And one of the things that most of the trans women in my life that were older were doing was taking like hard general like labor jobs in the fishing industry out of Alaska because you can make some really cute coin, save it up, fund the things and go back and forth. And when I took that route as well, Desi was actually someone that we shared that experience together. She had already been an OG in that space. And we ended up actually becoming bunkmates together and going through the season together. And this was like the most terrifying thing I feel like I'd ever done. And Desi was always someone that not only reassured me day in and day out, like, I don't know if you remember this, but I would be having a hard moment in the line, and like one of my jobs would be like literally sorting and grading fish, right? And so the fish would come down the belt, and basically I'd be the one to be like whether or not that fish goes here, there, or onto your plates at home. And Desi would walk through the factory and she'll be like, shh, and I'd look up and she goes, she goes, press. It was like trans telepathy downloading to remind me of like my reason for being there. And one of the things I also really admired about you is like you are this woman that is so full of faith that like day in and day out you would be championing us, praying over us. And so I think there's this beautiful connection between coming from like places like American Samoa or beyond to take these jobs in places to be able to like, my God, like the risk that it takes to like sacrifice and live your authentic self, right? Because, come on, do I look like I'm made for that life? I proved I could do it, but listen. So tell us more about that experience, Desi.
Okay, so 2009, I just moved back to Washington from Samoa. And a good friend of mine just finished her season, Nina. And so she was like, hey, I heard you're looking for a job. And I'm like, yeah. She was like, you want to try out fishing? So I was like, why not? Let's give it a try. So before I applied, I called my mom. I was like, Mom, I'm calling to get your blessings because I'm about to apply for this job. And when I left Samoa, my mom and I weren't in good terms. So she went into her hill spill of saying, I don't ask her for blessings. I get it from Heavenly Father. Anyways, she was like, okay, go. You got this. Applied, I got the job. Went out to Alaska, and my first day there, I remember getting off. And by the time I got off, after working 16 hours, like, I was wet, my feet was swollen, my back was hurting, my hands were hurting. And I remember calling my mom and I'm just bawling on the phone. And I'm like, Mom, I can't do it. And I think I'm just speaking for myself and my experience. Yeah. But I feel like I'm from the generation to where the Samoan parents' way of building you up was they had to break you down to your lowest.
Ooh. Anyone in the room relate to that?
And so, and I'm calling her, I'm crying, and I'm thinking she's gonna be like, oh, it's okay, come home. But all I got was and it was a waste of time of you coming. Wow. You should have just stayed home, and you're such an embarrassment. And I came from crying to now I'm looking at the phone and I'm like, oh no, she didn't. So, I'm like, whatever. So I hung up the phone, and it reminded me of when we were younger, growing up. My mom would always tell us, I don't really know how to translate it in English.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I feel like some of the Samoan sayings, when you translate it in English, the meaning to it is not the same. Mm-hmm. But I remember growing up, my mom would always say, I don't know if it means if you have like a big heart or a gut, anything and everything is possible.
Yeah.
So from that day, I did not call my mom until 3 months later. So I called my mom 3 months later. I'm like, hi, Mom. So she's going off. She's like, where the hell are you? You haven't called in 3 months. And she's going off. And I was like, do you have a pen and paper? She was like, for what? I was like, do you have a pen and paper? And so she was like, yeah. So I gave her the number. She's like, what is this? I was like, I sent you money through Western Union. And so that one contract turned into 15 plus years later. And within the 15 years, I've seen so many of my sisters like not to come. And I one of my goals that I really wanted to prioritize was to look out for the new girls that would come on, make sure that they're okay, make sure that they feel comfortable, make sure that they're safe. And just reminding them, just like what Nato said, you know, because at the time, the insurance, yes, there was insurance on the boat, but it didn't cover as many things as it's able to cover today. And so that was many of our ways to provide for our gender affirming care was to go out and work on the fishing boats, to save our coin, to look this beautiful.
That's right. The face, the
And
body.
so, period. And so I'm very thankful, you know, with my experience of working on the fishing industry, because with that, I was able to support and provide for my family, which is, I know many of us Samoan affirming is that's like a responsibility that's given to us. Is we're known as the caretakers, the providers, the supporters for our families, because, you know, many of us were not married. And so we're looked at as, since a lot of our siblings, they're married, they have kids, and then with us not being married, it's like, okay, you're the one that's gonna do, you know, taking care of mom and dad, which
There's that
is
expectation within the families.
which is, I love how Utopia did the Tausi play that really went into depth in explaining, you know, the roles of Fafafing is within our families, communities, churches, and villages.
Yeah, thank you so much for shouting that out. Yeah, one of the things I really admired about you throughout that time is, yes, being that person that looked out for all of the new girls, right, that were coming through boat life. True, I'm really curious to hear your take on one, your upbringing and what that looked like, and how does it inform how you move through the world today. Well, I'm sure, especially as it touches on like economic opportunity, because I'm sure you have a very different story than Desi here. Yeah.
So for me, growing up, I grew up in a Muslim family, and so my mom married a Muslim man, and so in my household it was very, very, and I'm also the oldest, second oldest, but oldest AFAB, assigned female at birth, and so the household was very gendered and a little toxic. And I'm not gonna lie, like one thing I heard a lot, even from my stepdad, was like, oh, women should be seen, not heard type vibe. And it was like, they were like really serious about that. And it was very much like, you know, even like the household work was very like split when it came to gender. And I think it's not a positive influence, but it definitely kind of taught me like, I think it impacts the way I move, especially as a trans person who is not passing. In Seattle, because I feel like there's this concept of like, if you tell somebody your pronouns and they're like, oh, here we go with that, da, 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 or like if you even fight back, it becomes a thing. And I think that really speaks to like a sort of privilege. Like I feel like people, especially the non-binaries, I feel like it's usually like white queers who will fight if somebody like says their pronouns wrong and they just met them for the first time, they'll kind of be combative. But I've learned really early that like, that can get you hurt. So like, you know what I mean? So like, I think some people on the outside, they'll be like, oh, I'm glad you don't like take it seriously or whatever. Like they perceive it as like me being like copacetic, but really it's a survival mechanism. Like, especially when it comes to economics, because I did grow up in a very low poverty household. So it's like, okay, if I correct this person by pronouns, am I gonna lose my job? Am I gonna lose out on opportunities to advance? You know what I mean? And it's kind of like a lot of times I choose not to fight the battle, honestly, because sometimes it's not worth it. Or I'm like, okay, am I gonna see this person again? Am I in community? Is this somebody who I want to build community with? Like I really kind of go down my checklist of like, okay, is it worth getting you to see me, or am I just gonna choose to see me?
Yeah.
And I feel like that, and the way that's a positive is that it really strengthens my love for myself, is that like I don't need to prove anything to anybody. I don't need to be anything for anybody. I know who I am, and I know I'm not where I want to be, but I'm gonna get there, and nobody else is gonna get me there, or stop me from getting there. So, I'm not gonna lie, that'd be my motivation to put that tee on every day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna get there, and this is gonna be for me. So it's like it's a mental strengthening. That I don't have to make it about other people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And what you're doing is like real talk, like risk assessment, right?
Yeah.
It's like now that I've given you the information and you're showing to me what you're doing with that information, I can choose how much I want to engage and whether it's worth it in this moment. And if it's not, also, I'm going to choose myself and decide, peace out. I'm okay.
And it doesn't have to be a big old blow up too. I could just not talk to you anymore, and that could be the end of it right there. So it's peace too,
Yeah. Angel Tupu has led so many like messaging initiatives around a lot of these themes. I'm curious, Angay, can you share more about like your roots, your upbringing, and how that shows up in the world today as it comes to like economic opportunities or not?
Sure. I do want to add on to what you said about, being fully actualized, right, as a person. I think the beautiful thing about our culture as Samoan people, or as Sangat Pasifika, is that we understand that as individuals, we're fully actualized from birth, right? Versus Western cultures where we're told that we need to prove ourselves, we need to create worth through capitalist ways, whether it's proving yourself within society, be a contributing member to society. No, we're fully actualized from birth, right? And my worth was, shown to me at a young person, at a very young age. I'm going to paint a picture of what safety looks like in Samoa, but also what it looks like within my own family. I was raised in Pango, which is, Pango.
Period.
They're going to be like, did you just pronounce it that way? Specifically the Autapini side of Pampanga, which is from my grandma's house. If you look out the window, you could see the mouth of the Pampanga Harbor. It's where you see, it's the finish line for the Fotasi boat races, which are long boat races in Samoa, where there's up to 50 people on boats. And, we're coming up on Flag Day season. Go Aeto. And, I grew up at my grandmother's house. This is before my mom met my stepdad, and we moved, further inland in our own home. But I lived in my grandmother's house. I had 5 aunts and uncles, and they had their kids. So there were at least 30 people in that house, and there are kids everywhere. And I felt safe. I saw myself reflected within community, within my own family. My grandmother has a sibling, Fafafine sibling. I've never met them, but their name is Yopu. So anytime I would get in trouble, my grandma would be like, Yopu, do this, Yopu, get that. I'm like, who the hell is Yopu? So I want to honor, my Fafafine elder through those stories. But also, I saw Kaleo, who was this amazing sewist who's part of Utopia's WOW program, Warriors of Wisdom for Elders. And she made all the clothes in our village. In school, I had teachers such as Sasha Atio'o, Lydia Risati, Athena, Tahir, Siobhan, so many Fafafine teachers. And I saw myself reflected within communities. So we all have, I feel like we have a healthy a sense of self-esteem, being raised.
A little too healthy.
A little too healthy. The audacity and the Lulu is serious within Samoan Fafafine communities. And that's what safety looks like, right? Being raised within community, living off the land. I didn't need no toys. My grandmother's house had all the trees, mangoes, sugarcane. You're, eating off the land, and you had each other. You had your neighborhood kids. And if it wasn't until I got a little older, my mom met my stepdad. I love him. He's my father. But he came into our life, and he used to be in a band. and he used to drink a lot. And my mom was like, mm-mm. My grandma was
Those
like,
two don't mix.
my grandma's like, mm-mm, you going to church? And so he tried to butch me up, right? He would send me to, my uncle's house to the village boys and try to learn how to do the umu, right? And I was picking them up with the tongs and dropping hard rocks. And my uncle was like, get the hell out of here. And I would always come home after, this, journey to whatever butchness and come home and tell my dad that I didn't do it right or whatever. And he would just come up with more things for me to do to try to be butch. But it was too late, and that I think that comes from the intersection of culture and religion, right? And he came from a Mormon church, and so he tried to instill those values within me. But by then it was too late. I already know who I was. I saw myself reflected in so many community members. I remember in high school, I had these two teachers, Athena and Tahir. And they had just moved back from Chaminade University in Honolulu. And so a lot of Fa'afafine, when they come back from pursuing higher education, they become teachers. And so they were my teachers. And I was like, who is this girl with, she had the beautiful long hair.
Anyone knows Athena, you'd clock her hair.
Her hair was down to here. The moans were moaning. They came up with breasts, and I was like, where do I get that at? And so in high school, I knew where to find community. I knew to get the stories. I, made a plan. I knew that it was already also around a time where the height of the CSI shows, right? Where the only representation of trans people in the media were sex workers being murdered. And I know that caused a lot of fear in my mother. And so my mom would always try to get me to stay home, and I'm like, I am getting the scholarship and getting off this island. I'm not joining the military. I'm not gonna join football. No, could you imagine? So
I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't. I made a plan with Tahir and Athena. I was like, where do I go when I get to Chaminade? That's where all the dolls went to, pursue higher education, but also the journey to medical intervention.
Yeah.
And they told me this is where you go see Dr. Rodwell when you get to Hawaii, get your hormone shots, and just laid out this plan for me, right? And so they were my possibility model. And, I worked really hard at school. I've always been good at school. And I knew that if I did well in school, the government would pay for my way to leave the island, right?
Yeah.
And so I had this plan in place, since freshman year. And, my mom knew, I am my mother's daughter, and I'm repeating a lot of her journeys. And so she knew, and she told me, you should just stay here and finish school. And I know that comes from a lot of fear with seeing trans women murdered, and also this whole new world where we're not just people living within a bubble on an island. We're transnationals. We're migrating to different places. We're experiencing different groups of people. And so I know there was this fear that my mother held on to. And when I got to Hawaii, I, had the courage to tell her I'm going to pursue gender-affirming care. I was going to get bottom surgery. And, from her faith and also from her fear, I was disowned, right? And it had been the first time I was 17. I was living in a new place, did not know anybody. And to come from having so much support and feeling so safe within my family, my huge family, and to have lost that all at once was hurtful, but also probably the worst experience of my life. And so what I turned to as far as economic opportunity was pooching, right? I was in school, the semester was about to end, and I needed to find a place to stay.
Yeah.
And so I pooched after school.
Even within the queer community, we have an understanding of what pooching is. To other communities of color, when I use the term pooching, to them, it means something different. So other people have told me that when their understanding of pooching literally just means perching. So it's like going out and feeling cute, and you may get like, passes at you or like the adulation of it all by being just really fabulous and like in a public place. But we have a different understanding of pooching.
Our understanding of pooching is sex work, and that's a term I learned within Hawaiian mahu communities, and it's a lot of our language like ovas, yunt, that's what I turned to survive, and it's what I've done for many years, even in adulthood. And some people turn to fisheries and hard labor jobs for gender affirming care. A lot of us girls, found gender affirming care through pooching, and a lot of girls still do that to this day, right? Because we know that a lot of the opportunities and economic opportunities are few and far between, right? And there is, we face transphobia, a lot of violence within employment opportunities that we're, existing.
And it can be a very far place from where you start in your gender journey to get even just one step ahead, whatever that looks like, right? And what I mean by that is like, if you were maybe to transition later in life, like your job literally being at risk, right? If people were to learn about certain things, other resources get pulled from you, family, pull away from you. And it's interesting even hearing, like, even though you're someone that very young was like self-actualized and still accepted within the home, it took up until like getting medical transitioning done for much of that safety to be pulled out from under you almost. And as you were sharing, Desi was like really relating to a lot of what you shared. So I'm curious if Desi, you want to share a bit more about that.
So the reason why I didn't mention safety in my home, because growing up, I didn't experience that. Like alcohol, violence, abuse, all kinds of abuse surrounded my family for like a long time. And so for me, most of the abuse that I was facing was coming from my family, so I was thinking like, in my eyes, I was looking at my family thinking that they should be the ones that were protecting me. But it was the opposite. They were the ones that were abusing me. So, the thought of the many times I considered unaliving myself, because I was young, I knew I was different, but why I was different, I didn't know. I did know I was very feminine. My brothers would go and play football with the boys, but I'm in the kitchen with the women and everything. So I'm very grateful that my mom and I were at such a healthy place. Now, again, going back to the fishing industry, because working in the fishing industry, anything she needed, I was able to. So I came from being the black sheep to now she's putting me on the pedestal.
I mean, you're literally a queen.
Thank you. And so now I'm just, now I can say I have safety within my family. Now I know that. But my siblings from the get-go, they were always protective and supportive. But to me, the one person that I was expecting more of it from was my mom, but I didn't get it from her before. But now she's on board, like hands down.
Sister, I'm so grateful you're still here. I relate so much to the experience of when I was young, I was a little shit. Like, believe it or not, like you might meet me today and be like, wow, she's so vibrant, she's so nice, she's so kind. I was fighting anyone and everyone to be able to feel seen, but because so many people tried to minimize me and they hardened me. And for me, it was like, I'm just trying to show you all what I'm experiencing, and I hope that somebody can do something about it. But in a lot of ways, like the harm that I experienced, people would like make me feel like I was in the wrong for defending myself, right? or that I should keep quiet about it. And in a lot of ways I did, and I carried those traumas. But like, nary a time when like my household would get a call to be like, oh, she's in the office again. She was fighting, because who remembers why, right? But I remember. And when I was trying to tell an adult about the violence and the harm that I was experiencing, it was always made to look like I was in the wrong, because time and time again, I'd end up in the office. Why? Because I was defending myself. But it started to look like I was the problem child, right? So I completely relate to that. And that was my experience growing up in Samoa. Thankfully, it changed, and I was able to open and broaden my experiences, moving through different parts of the country. Like, I'd lived in Seattle growing up. I'd also lived in places like Hawaii. And I started to see a lot of different ways that I could shapeshift and gain acceptance and love. And it helped heal so many things. But I'm curious to hear from True, like growing up in Seattle, like what that looked like for you, and where does safety exist for you today?
Yeah. So I moved around Washington a lot. So I also lived in Everett, Seattle, Tacoma, all over Tacoma. So I came out later in life when I was living in Tacoma, and I think the key thing for me was community. So like I was in like high school to like now in Tacoma, and I spent a lot of time just like already in community and like, you know, doing volunteer stuff and stuff like that. And so like I feel like Tacoma is very different from Seattle in the sense that it's
Tell us why, because we know.
and not for bad reasons. Okay, people.
What's
honestly,
the rep?
Okay, y'all know what the rep is. Well, if you're from Seattle, you know what the rep is. People have a bad connotation to Tacoma. Whatever. It was rah back in the day. Yeah. But every place got its, you know, its quirks or whatever. But honestly, Tacoma, I would really say Tacoma is very, very community driven. And so I came up in Hilltop, which has probably the worst rep in Tacoma. But like, and when you come from a community that has gone through so much, like economically, like just, you know, gentrification, all these things of like, you know, the drug crisis, like intentional ways of breaking up a community, like that community is going to rebuild itself, and it's going to be protective over, you know, its territory, its neighborhood, and the places that they call home. And so like, you know, Hilltop is one of those places where it's like, if you're really from the community, you can walk down the street 3 blocks and you're going to see at least 3 people you know, because it's just that like tight knit of a community. And so a lot of people in that community, they know me before I came out, and they've known me since high school. And so they got a lot of respect for who I am and how I carry myself. And so like, I've never really felt like an outsider as I transitioned. Like people, people have this like negative connotation about like Black people in the queer community. And like, it's if you're not in it, you're not gonna understand, you know what I mean? And so it's like a lot of people, maybe they might mess up with my pronoun every now and then, but like they really see me as a person. And so that's one thing I will definitely say. Like I'm also someone who had to kind of find community outside of my home, because my family left me in Washington when I was like 17. They moved to Missouri. They've been there ever since. So I've been on my own since I was 17, and probably left home a little bit before that. So like I have really had to build my own sense of community, my own sense of like family. And I think like that effort really came a long way. Like, so like I really do feel seen in my community, and that people know me. Seattle, I feel like when I do come to Seattle, because Tacoma is still Tacoma, we do gotta still come to Seattle, you know, for the queer scene and find our people. And so like I feel like when I'm in Seattle, it feels very like I have to know where I'm going, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna find my people right away, but I will say shout out to the ballroom community. That's where I got my grounding and just like who I am in my expression and feeling comfortable being myself fully, and having like, you know, house families and going to balls and having kikis outside of the, you know, the event. Like that's really where it was like, I don't have to piece myself together. I could just be my full self. And so I think that is the unique thing about Washington. Yeah, especially when you're queer and you're a person of color, like to be able to find those places where you can be both, it's special. It can be rare sometimes, but it's worth searching out for. And I think like Washington, if anything, has taught me like the importance of community building and like what does it look like to be a active community member. And that comes with the good and the bad of like moving through accountability, moving through conflict, but also like being intentional with who you pick. Like just because you share identity with somebody doesn't mean that's going to be your person or your people. Like
not all skin folk are kinfolk.
Okay, period. And so like you really like building intentional relationships and really getting to know people and not even like not just because of how they identify, you know. I think sometimes people can be like, "Oh, you're trans too. Oh, yeah." Like, let's not fetishize each other, okay? Like, we're all still people, you know what I mean? And not hold each other to a standard that's higher than we're holding other people or even ourselves to. Like, let's still remember we are all still fully people. And so I think it has really grown me and shaped me to the adult that I am today. And so I'm really grateful for it. Yeah, I'd be nothing without community, honestly. So, yeah, I'm not sure if you answered that.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. We are coming up on time, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time here to maybe close this out because we've learned so much about not only your individual life experiences, your journey, where you found empowerment, where you've received some pushback, and how you've stayed resilient and through it all. And I'm so grateful that you've been able to join us here on this panel to impart many of those experiences and knowledge and stories and histories and all of the iseries to our virtual communities. To help close us out, I'm curious to hear from each of you, and we'll go down the line starting from Isis. What does good love look like to you today?
When I think of good love, I think of not just within the romantic sense, but within community, you know, sense of community and having love for the people that nourish you and care for you, right? I think about all the older papafine, you know, elders and aunties who, when we would act up as kids, they would just be like, right before they were gonna read us, they'd be like, and give us one look. I see that as love. I think of just how communities, I was reading a little bit about the artwork back there by Toka, shout out to Toka, about how communities are built across generations, right? And we see that in this beautiful hall that's named after, you know, our elder, Sili Sabusa. We see that in the work that's been laid out in front of us, you know, by elders such as Auntie Sili, my real auntie, Auntie Violet. You know, Mama Vena, Taffy, all the folks that had the audacity.
I love that.
to do something different and to create community away from, you know, from home as migrants. I see love within, you know, my own relationship where I am vulnerable and seen, you know, as my authentic self. I also see love in siblinghood, not just with Fafafine, but with like Black and brown, queer and trans people. I see that in Twaxin, which is an Trans Women of Color Solidarity Network. And I see just the level of like badass organizing that exists with not just within Utopia, but also in Twaxin, where 5 people can come together, volunteer, and give out close to $2 million directly into the hands of Black and brown trans women. I see it in the clinic that's, you know, at Utopia and the beautiful work that Utopia continues to do. And I also see it within myself, knowing that the love that I have for myself liberates not just me, but my mother, my grandmother, and all the women in my family.
That is so beautiful. And I love how when you said clinic, you looked at me. True, what does good love look like for you today?
For me, the first thing that definitely came to mind was friendships, for sure. Just kind of that, just like consistency in friendship and love. I saw this, like one of those street interview videos, and somebody had talked about love being specific. And so like not just giving like a generalized love to, you know, everybody, but like really knowing your people and knowing what showing up for them specifically looks like. I don't know. I think my friend, like, She loves to call every day. I don't like to talk every day, but I'm gonna answer for you.
Yes.
But if she don't call me out in 2 days, then I know, okay, I need time to look at the locations, time to start sending text out, seeing if she's good. And like just being able to get to know people on a specific level of like, yeah, how do we know and learn to care for one another? And also my family too. This past year has been crazy, but family I'm not gonna call it unconditional love. I don't think it's unconditional love, but I think it's like loving each other regardless, and regardless of how we irritate each other or what we go through, still seeing that we still have the love of the person, and knowing that we can love each other through anything. Specificity of love. That's all. Yeah.
Specificity of love. Desi, what does good love look like to you today?
So this just reminds me of now that I have Angayo Tupu here. She had mentioned the memories. And so now with this question, good love to me reminds me of our younger years. It was just a group of us, Samoan Fafafing I think it was about 20 plus of us. And all of us were young at the time, and our thing was going out every weekend. And we would go as a group. But you fucked with one of us, you're gonna deal with all of us. And I loved that, I loved back then when one girl was in need, we were there to help her, to care for her, uplift her. It didn't matter what she was going through. It was welcoming her with open arms, no judgment, no whatever. So it took me back to that time. Also the love that I'm receiving from my family, and then the love that I have to remind to give to myself. And I feel that that's very important for me, because that's how I'm able to show up is, by reminding myself, of who I am, and especially with the title that, I have. I'm gonna give away in 2 more weeks, but I'm also thankful for Utopia Washington, for everything, because it was with me getting winning the title. I was able to show up in many spaces, and it was with me showing up in these spaces I met so many amazing individuals, and it takes me back to my drag show fundraiser. Every girl that I reached out to perform for me, whether the last time they performed was years ago, they all said yes. Everyone that I reached out to, they said yes. And same thing for my benefit show happening tomorrow. A lot of the individuals that are performing tomorrow, I met them through an event that I went to. And so, I reached out, hey, I'm doing a benefit show. Would you mind performing for you anytime? So I'm like, thank you. Good love to me is the many positive words, the many uplifting words that's been showered over me, during my reign. And I believe it was with all those uplifting words and the love and support from community that was able to help me with going forward. So thank you, everyone. I love you guys.
Thank you so much. Angaya Tupu wants to put her hat in the ring for the next call.
I didn't get a call.
Oh, next time, sister.
No, we had our performing days, and I know what I'm not good at. So
please don't ever do Alejandro by Lady Gaga ever again. It was tried. Don't do it again. I love you. What good love looks like for me, you all, is right in this room. It's similar to what you just said, is when I pick up a phone and make an ask, that not only you pick up the phone on the other end, but you meet me somewhere in the middle. And so I just really want to thank you all for saying yes, for being part of this program, for you all for joining us here in this space, and really sharing in this vibe for Island Fever. And with that, let's sign off and say bye.